More snow than it's here.
Yeah.
I think we're still,
Yeah.
they're,
Don't think I'll be there.
they're moving more onto nurse practitioner.
It's wonderful.
Nice.
You're good to go.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order tonight and welcome our guests here. Moved by Councillor McGuinness, second by Councillor Clark, that this meeting be open at 7 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Then we have the adoption of the agenda. And we will be moving 6F is the report from the fire chief up
Before presentation.
before the presentation, yes. Moved by Councillor Featherstone, second by Councillor McGuinness, that the agenda presented to council and dated the 28th day of January 2025 be adopted as presented, I guess with the amendment to 6F.
Yep.
All in favor? Carried. Next, we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. I will declare an interest in 9E. And I believe in the closed session tonight, I will be declaring an interest as well. Any other? No. Next, we'll adopt the minutes and then we'll have the fire chief's report. Moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor McGuinness, that the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 14th, 2025 be adopted as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Next, we're going to have the fire chief's report.
So this report highlights the activities for the fire department from December 12th to January 16th. This purpose is to keep the committee and the community informed of the fire service operations. So operations, we currently have 15 active volunteer firefighters. Over this time frame, we responded to 12 calls for service, 11 of those being medical, one of those being a structure fire. This brings our 2024 total to 66 calls. Calls to date as of 2025 up till January were 4 calls. Our regular meeting, so we gave the guys a bit of a Christmas break from the last one before Christmas until first Monday in January when the guys were back, and then we got back into truck inspections, making sure everything was good after all the calls over the holiday season. Cleaned up, restocked, all of the stuff that was off was all gone back on. PPE, all the SCBA checks and bunker gear checks were completed. And then again, clean up the trucks, clean up the hulls, make sure everything is presentable. Special training, our new fire prevention officer has completed his legislation in-class portion. He needs to do his exam for that one, and he's signed up for, I believe, 2 other courses already. Moving on with training. Updates from the fire chief. So station 2, we've moved the gear lockers off the floor into the back office. We've kind of made it into a smaller desk with lockers in there for cancer reduction and prevention. Same thing with station 1. We're currently in the process of taking all of our gear off the floor so that it's away from all the diesel particulate in the hall. And we've moved it, from inside the apparatus floor, we've moved it into the hallway. And again, in the name of cancer prevention and reduction, kind of keep all that contaminant off. Our fire queue data input and usage is well underway at this point. Most of our reporting is not being done paper. We're doing it all on the computer. The guys are adapting very well and very easily to it. It's a pretty straightforward software. Fire prevention, again, it's ongoing during each and every incident. Calls, we're always watching for smoke alarms, clutter, stuff in the houses that we can kind of inform and prevent ahead of time. On Monday, January 20th, our fire prevention officer headed with all of our guys, went down Pine Lake Road, started at the very end and worked their way back and completed CO and smoke inspections for Pine Lake Road. Our next step, we're going to push off into Shields Point area. So kind of every month or every other month, we're going to push for at least one night to get out in the community and do more fire prevention, be seen, be heard, and hopefully prevent some stuff. Fire prevention officer is also building a 2025 calendar of events that's currently underway. He's kind of feeling everything out right now with stuff coming in from the committee, from you guys, with what you guys have going on and what he wants to see. And he's also developing a smoke and CO inspection plan to complete the whole township between now and 2026 is the plan to have everything completed. Community involvement, we have the Family Day event coming up in the next couple of weeks. And that's everything we have for, brings us up to speed.
Okay. Any questions for Josh?
That was a good report.
No? Okay, thank you very much for your report.
Perfect, thank you.
And I just want to explain that he had a call out, so that's why we've moved him up in front.
On page 3, there's a motion to accept his
I have
report.
it, yeah.
Okay.
Moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Corbett, that the council for the Township of Bonfield accepts the monthly report submitted by the acting fire chief. All in favor? Carried.
Perfect, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Good
it.
luck.
Fantastic.
See you, Josh.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, now we'll go back to our agenda and we have a presentation tonight from the Steel Rail Committee, an update. Karen?
Hello, everyone,
Hi.
and thank you for having us back. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Your Honor, and Council. I'm Karen Gagne, local entrepreneur and advocator for economic development. I'd like to introduce our Steel Rail Committee again, a group, and they'll be speaking very, very briefly after me. Stephen Philpott is our president. Elmer Rose is our vice president. And I'm treasurer. Unfortunately, Lise Fu could not make it this evening. She was caught up in her business, and I totally understand that. I hope you do too. So we have 2 guests with us tonight, and they are fellow visionaries ourselves. We have Bill Spear, founder of the Ecology Center, and Bob Simmons, former treasurer for the Mattawa Museum for many, many years. Also, he is on the hospital board, and he didn't want me to mention him, but he was a former bank manager, I think in Toronto.
No comment from Toronto.
All right, okay. So our objective tonight is to continue to come along with the Railway Museum that we wish to build on leased land in Rutherglen. And as requested by council, I have present the 3-year forecast. And I believe you would have received that, and business plan. And if there's any questions, if we could hold them till later, I can briefly give you an overview. I've kept the bottom balance very, very conservative, because I believe that that is where we're looking down the road at. There are 2 grants in there available, Trillium and the NOHFC, one for wages and one for build. So as there isn't any more for that, I'm going to ask Stephen if he will come up and say a few words, please. Thank you. And then Elmer.
What?
I will
Thank you.
sit down there.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you very much for your time. I hope you had time to look through the business plan that we put forward. Of course, it's an initial start on that, and that's a living document that we'll continue to work on. We can go through questions later if you wish, but I would like to draw your attention to the one thing that Jason asked for, was a list of current jobs that we plan to take on, and you check them off. Say, you said 9, I think, at the time, and we got 11 on there. So I won't go through each of them, but we're doing well. One update on those is the Ontario Heritage Trust plaque. They had asked us, they had closed off their application period because they were so backed up, but they did phone back about 2 weeks before the deadline and said, can you submit something for whatever reason? So we thought we were prepared. We got it in, and they actually were quite impressed with the history of our area here. And so the lady that is their coordinator, I guess, she got on the phone with me and said that the board of directors was quite pleased, and they don't usually do this, but they, as she said, but they asked us to put together a couple of plaques, the text for the actual plaques, and return them to them. So we're not waiting. We're being looked at for this year. They're not postponing us till next year. So yeah, we're working on that. It's got to be Ontario centric. So I asked her, what do we look at? So we're sticking with the railroad theme, but why did Bonfield used to be Callender Station? And it's an interesting story, because how far is Bonfield from Callender? And so a whole new community is built, including Bonfield and Rutherglen, and within after they started the railroad, I think only a couple of years before the Grand Trunk came up and became the CN later, through Callender. So we'll go with a theme like that first. That one, she seemed to be interested in that one, and I assume she's we're just sort of staying away from the national picture, but we can take care of that in the museum. So other than that, we are in the process of trying to find a location, and this is our job right now. The cost of a building, everything's in the process of going on right now. And I think what we're going to start doing, and that's probably a good reason why Bill's here, is starting a campaign to get some public, because we need public support rather than the council. But with public support, hopefully will come some young people who are comfortable with social media, and get that going. We are really grateful to have Simon as our liaison. He's got so many ideas. It's terrific. So he's got us pushing towards the public interest. And so we met with Anthony Rhoda, And he also pushed for the public interest. So we're gonna make a start with that. Anyways, that's about it. And if you have any questions about the plan in its initial stages, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now Elmer.
Tonight I'll give you another history lesson, a different approach on the museum and the people or residents of Bonfield. Steve was talking about local support. As of this morning, I've got 3 more phone calls wanting to donate artifacts to us. We have no building or anything to house it. Some of the machinery is really ancient. Some of the first machinery came into Rutherglen. It's been donated by a farmer here to us, which is all ours. But as longer we wait and don't process it, we're gonna lose it. It'll probably end up in the Bonfield dump, like everything else. So that's just something to think about. In railway terms, our communities have worked on this first spike committee for about 28 years, believe it or not. On my behalf, and many volunteers. And about 1.5 years ago, Nikki has come to us and you know, let's try to get this jump start and get it going again. And I actually had to give up. If it wasn't for Steve and Karen and some of the other coastal residents, I was ready to throw the towel in, but it seems now that we have a lot of support out there. And now that we're working with the feds and the provincial government and that, they're quite interested in too what we're doing here. So it's quite important, I believe, for our residents here, and hopefully we can turn the crank and get the engine started here. As you see, we have some good friends with us tonight, and as I've been preaching to you about the 6 years I put in at Mattawa and 3 years as a president, and we came from being in debt and not know how to pay the curator, and then we left with $13,500 in the bank. It appears that my followers has followed me and said, you did a half decent job. So I kind of bring that expertise to you too. And we also have the curator, the former curator of the Mattawa Museum wanting to join forces here and be our curator here in Bonfield. So we now have funding, we have locals interested. We have outsiders interested. And as of this week, I've also dealt with 3 different families, one in Alberta, one in Haileybury, and one in Swan River. And Dan, you might be interested. The people of Swan River actually was born and raised on your farm. They're the first settlers on your farm. And they came to me looking for questions and answers. And so we are working back and forth with their museum now out there too. And the Haileybury Museum is really interesting when I'm working there. The Sparks family originally came out of Mattawa, but they settled for a little bit of time here in Rutherglen on Sparks Creek. And that's how it got its name down here in Rutherglen. There's 2 sawmills there on both sides of the bridge of Highway 17 there once upon a time. And Sparks was incorporated in one of those mills there. But he also left Rutherglen as a prospector and ended up out into Michigan. From there, he went out to Alberta, and then he came back into Haileybury. And apparently, the guy in Alberta had passed away and left all these pictures. I had all the stories. So now we have a complete picture of who this Mr. Sparks was, and his wife was Elizabeth Purdy, which was the sister to the gentleman who founded the Purdy mica mine just below Rutherglen. So this is stuff that's all going to be lost if we don't start preserving it. And that's why I'm asking, you know, for your attention, folks, we can get this off the ground and get the thing going for our residents and for CP Rail. We also have been connected with the Railway Club in North Bay. There's not many of us left, but I would say still 50 members or so. They get together every Tuesday morning. We have scheduled a meeting with them, and they're going to be backing us on the rail project on Bonfield here. And hopefully we'll collect some more artifacts on that end of the road too. Just in closing here, I'm gonna pick on Andre tonight. I picked on all you last time I was here. And, I thought it was quite interesting when they dug up. Did we ever find Michael Dunn's picture? He used to hang on the wall here.
Yes,
Okay.
according to Andre, we did find
We
it.
did find it, okay.
She looked after it for us.
Good girl. Well, in 1881, he was 15 years old, and I mentioned this before. He came up with his dad with the railroad working the gangs coming from Mattawa to Bonfield here. And he was made the mailman by Duncan McIntyre. At the same time, he was a run-rummer. He would bring homemade moonshine or whatever and deliver to the gangs along the track and make a little extra few bucks on the side. So by 1885, they decided to make him, he was 29 years old. They said to him, well, we'll give you the chief clerk here in Bonfield, and your salary is going to be $50 per year. And Mr. Dunn said, no way, he wasn't going to settle for that. So what did he do? He settled for $60 per year. And he ended up being chief clerk and going around farm to farm, putting up the quarantine notices when diphtheria and everything was going through here. And he had a lot of duties and all that to go through. But he served as 52 years as our clerk. And I really think we should have more than just a picture hanging here on the wall for him. So this is where our museum and all our friends here are hoping to put together and make Bonfield recognized for what they have done in the past and what could happen here in the future too. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Elmer.
Thank you, Elmer. Bob Simmons, please.
Pleasure. I'm not the local guy, but so I'm Bob Simmons. I've been here about 12 years, and I've known Elmer and Karen from the museum board and the hospital board. I can say this when she couldn't pick a better team to do this from the ground up. I mean, there's a lot of passion, a lot of experience. I see my role as more or less doing the grant preparations, finances, things like that. But I think got a good ground here to get this rolling. So I think everything else has been covered. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And lastly, but not least.
Okay. Good Mayor and Council. I first heard about the first bike, I think in my first book in 1990. And I've always thought about, I'm glad to hear the update on the plaque. And so I always thought there should be American style billboard somewhere near Truck on the Road about the first bike, because I think back of various other articles about the first bike. I always say, we know where the last bike was hammered in, but we never, of course, if you're curious enough, you always ask the other question, where's the first bike? And it's good to hear that, the community has a plan. And as a media person, I'll lend any support I can, and maybe you'll end up on the Back Roads Built podcast where we get your podcast. But it's, and I know projects from the Ecology Center, and it has to be realistic. And there has to be champions. I know from being a consultant all over Northern Ontario in tourism, there's no champions, it's never going to go forward. So I applaud the champions here tonight, and look forward to the next steps in this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you, council. At this point in time, I know that you've just looked over all of the financials that I sent you and the plan and that, and it's just so interesting. Numbers are interesting to me, so that's why I say that. But and now we'll wait for you to evaluate our request, and if you could come back to us with an answer, and if possible in a timely fashion, some type of timeline. That's what we would like to see, if at all possible.
Okay. I just want to commend you for working on this and trying to put something together to keep our history, the history of our municipality together. It's so important because I think people think this township just happened, and there's a lot of people here that built it up, and all the artifacts, all the museum items, and I know that it's, when I go to the Mattawa Museum or any museum, it's very, very interesting to see who built the community, what happened, and I think you have very ambitious ideas, and I don't think that it's fair that council doesn't make a decision. So what I would suggest to the RCAO, to our council, that we have a closed session meeting and come back with an answer for what you requested of us, either yes or no, and then you know that you can, if we're not going to support it, then you know that maybe you have to work on something else or work on another site. But I think it's fair to say council will come together and discuss it and give you an answer. And I'm going to say within the next month, we can have a closed session meeting because it involves property. And we can have a closed session with it as far as I'm concerned. And then we'll get back to you.
Thank you so
So-
much, council. Very.
If
great.
that's
Thank you,
fair.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for your interest in our community.
It's our heart.
Thank you.
Chris, questions? Oh, wait, I think we have questions.
There's a question.
Wow, you just so happen to leave, eh? Yeah, get out of here, man.
No, you just thought that we were being excused. I'll just sit down and you can direct your question to whoever you wish.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'll echo the mayor, you know, I commend you for the work you're doing, obviously very ambitious. Couple of just questions as I look at your cash flow projections and some of your fundraising goals as well as your grants. Have you on the NOHFC, so I have spent 6 years on the NOHFC board locally as the local rep, obviously. So what I don't see is, depending on on what stream you're going, there is going to be either a local portion that you'll have to actually contribute. So that I think you allotted $250,000 will be only a percentage of the total project cost. So there is a portion that you'll have to fund up to a maximum of, or it's actually a repayable loan. So depending on the stream, you're going to have to make sure that you're building that into your projections and cash flow. So if you haven't connected with one of the local NOHFC reps, they have an office here in North Bay, and I would recommend that you do that. They'll be very helpful.
Absolutely, and we do have options. We have the funding could come in through, hopefully through donations, through fundraisers and that. And we have not got in touch with them yet because we are waiting for an answer. We don't want to go there and say, this is what we want to build, and we have no place to build it on. So I mean, we thought we'd put the horse before the cart with NOHFC.
Right.
But that's where we'd like to go. And it's wonderful that you're on it. You're volunteering your time for that.
I
It's
used to.
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that sort of along the same line. There is a method to do this. So I guess we have to, in order for you to go ahead, we have to, and at least in principle, say that there is a space, right? So,
Exactly.
okay.
Yes,
So,
Donna.
so these numbers, I'm just kind of wondering where the numbers came from. Like what is the method that you use? Because you've got, annual memberships in year one at $1,000. So I imagine that this is based on something, correct?
We're sort of structured on the museum days, like we're with admission fees, which was, I believe it was $10 for adults and children. We really don't have a lot of input to start, but we're trying to model off that. There's a certain appetite, I think, for railway museums over regular museums. I know my brother-in-law lives in Hamilton, like they're fanatics about that. So the whole railway community, I could be wrong, but there's a real harness of people.
You know, if you had some statistics to, like, I would really be interested in looking at some statistics. I think the last time, Karen, kind of, that report was what I was looking for. And it doesn't just have to be restricted to Canada, because I think that there is, you know, a rail movement probably all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So, if, that would probably help your cause, and it might even help with, grant writing and things like that. If you gathered the statistic and the information, I
We can
think
do
that
that.
that would,
Yes, we can do that. Bob, being treasurer, he had put numbers together for years and years of the
Mhm.
Madeline Museum. So that's where we
and is that what you
kind
ended
of
up with?
fashioned it off
Yeah.
there. And we do have the statistics from the Madeline Museum.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
what this was
Yes,
based on.
that's where it's
Okay,
fashioned
okay.
from, basically, yes.
And I guess the other thing is that the $250,000, that's for the build?
That's for probably we'll be doing the build in phases, and that will be probably the first phase, actually, yes.
So how many phases there's?
We're not sure, we're keeping it very, very small. Keeping it
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very
because my
small.
question was gonna be like, how big is this building gonna be? For 250,000, I mean, it's, you know, at the building costs, you're
Yeah.
300 plus a square foot.
Well, we do have a set of blueprints, so, there's a standardized stations right across Canada that CP built. One in Mattawa is one of a kind. So it won't be like that one at all. And the one that Rutherglen that originally was there was wooden frame, and whereas North Bay was logs.
Sorry,
So-
where was this? Where was this, building?
Right behind the store and Rutherglen.
Okay,
And even your station here at Bonfield is not the same design as what we're looking at, as far as the museum, but it's basically the original design, what they used across Canada. Which we will downsize it. It's not gonna be like 300 feet long or like that, you know, we'll downsize it to our purposes. We're also looking at maybe having a little coffee bar in there where people can come and have coffee and shoot the breeze with the history in the past and all this, and view the museum at the same time. There was another option we put on the table too, that it could be a two-story building and we could rent the upstairs as an apartment building as extra revenue for the museum itself. Then we got thinking there's pros and cons to all that too, so we've kind of backed out that. But what I hear tonight, everybody's looking at the government here for money, and that's not what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at the railroad itself. CP Rail, this is the birthplace, this is their birthday party. They already run the Calamachi Museum out there in BC and the Ogden Museum in Calgary. And they put up the money for that, and they have old steam engines, they have everything else going, tour
so
trains.
where are you in terms of, progression with that then? So you've reached out to them?
Anthony Rhoda, we met with him. He's got some people in mind that could get us in the door somewhere, CP, KC
Right,
now. And as I understand it too, the gentleman that organized tour for CPKC, the big tour that I think it started in Montreal perhaps, and went Calgary down to Mexico and this sort of thing. He is from the Waterloo Central group that restores engines and that sort of thing. They run a steam train. He is a resource, and he could get us in the door as well. And we've already, the other group I'm with is the restoration group in North Bay. And they've already been in touch with him and he's willing to help us out in that regard. So he could be of assistance to us.
and is that potential funding in here, reflected in here?
No, it isn't right now, so it's because of the fact that we're waiting for an answer here, and then we have set meetings with these people, Anthony wrote in that, so we're getting our ducks in order with the meetings in the future meetings, as soon as we know what the answer is here. There is no sense in us going through the motions of the grants and all of that. And we have a wonderful grant master right here. Before we actually see what we have to work.
But we can assure you, we're not looking for grants when we don't have all that information
right.
at hand.
And it's interesting because as council, it's like, oh, they're coming with all these grants. Yes, let's give them, right?
No,
So, you
no,
know, we're,
No, we have to game plan, and part of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is not having to pay a fortune for land. And perfectly aware that the cost of the building might be more like 500,000,
right,
and that's modest.
That's
amount
fair,
of money.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So that would be more probably what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Um,
But whatever we do, and being in business all of my life, actually, even before the store, we've always dealt with budgets,
Mhm.
always. And so I am positive that that is exactly how we're going to run this.
So, sorry, your worship, one more time. I just want to make sure that we don't come out with different expectations on so the municipality you almost need the municipality to do the first one with a notional yes, but we're probably actually, so if there's a notional yes, we're on the front end, but really technically the formal transfer or the lease document, it's almost the last piece at the end, right? So, because as long as you have the notional, you can go,
That's right.
because
Yeah.
we're not gonna lease a piece of property unless like it's ironclad that this thing is moving forward, right?
Absolutely.
So,
That's what we want to see.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So you're giving us permission without really having to do much.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
By
yeah.
saying,
Okay.
let's go.
Yeah.
So we'll go.
Right,
We'll go.
Right.
And we'll make things happen.
right. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And how
Okay,
can we approach sponsorships like CP Rail, which is the second biggest corporation in the world? Via Rail is also included in there, and we have the OVR, which is a little on the difficult side to work with because they're American.
Yeah,
But how do we approach these guys that saying that we're going to do this, do that, and we have no place to put the footing on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, the municipality needs to be one of your first. I get that
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. Like, we need to
exactly.
be your first champion and supporter for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Carol, did you want to say anything else?
okay. Steve, do you have any questions?
No, I look forward to our meeting and we'll figure it out then.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll let you go this time.
Okay, now you,
yeah, thank you very much.
the rest of the meeting's very interesting. You sure want to leave?
Been there and done that.
Yeah, Bill, it's good seeing you.
We'll go home and watch it.
No fire.
Thank
you.
Good
you.
night.
Take care.
I don't want to click this.
Oh,
There, I got it working.
you're gonna get yourself in trouble with Andre.
Oh, Andre will give me trouble.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, good night.
Okay, now we're going on to the staff reports, and there's a report from the CAO, provinces proposed amendments to the municipal act for integrity commissioners.
Okay, fine. So as you're aware, municipalities are seeking changes to the parameters regarding the integrity commissioners and municipal codes of conduct. So council has passed resolutions and forwarded them to the province in support of the initiative. Largely, the concerns are regarding oversight of the integrity commissioners themselves, consequences of poor behavior and at times illegal behavior of council members, and the processes that are followed. Municipal code of conduct are required under the Municipal Act and are further prescribed under an Ontario reg. So specifically, the ministry is proposing legislative amendments, and I'll just go through them so that everyone's very clear, but to enable the creation of one standardized code of conduct for all municipalities along with the training requirements. Enable the creation of standardized investigation processes for municipal integrity commissioner investigations. Create a role of an integrity commissioner of Ontario to provide training to the municipal integrity commissioners. Provide advice to municipalities regarding the independence of a person who may be appointed as the integrity commissioner. Conduct inquiries upon the municipal integrity commissioner's recommendation that a member be considered for removal of office, and create a mechanism for municipal councils to remove from office and disqualify for 4 years members of council for certain serious violations of the code of conduct. So the proposed standard would be that the Integrity Commissioner of Ontario could only consider the Municipal Integrity Commissioner's recommendation to remove or disqualify a member if all 4 of the following are met, and that's that there is a contravention of the conduct, the code of conduct, it's a serious nature, and the member's conduct has resulted in harm to the health, safety, or well-beings of persons, and the existing penalties are insufficient to address the contravention or to ensure it's not repeated. So the current penalties for proven misconduct are a reprimand. So an integrity commissioner would bring that to council, or a suspension of remuneration paid to the member as a member of council for a period of up to 90 days. So I've met with our integrity commissioner, reviewed this legislation and looked to him for the experiences that he's been having during his investigations. That discussion led to a few points. So one, it's a step in the right direction, what the province is proposing. So municipal codes are varied and some are simple while some are very complicated. So that creates inconsistencies when people are doing investigations from the integrity commissioner's point of view. So having a standard guide will be helpful in setting expectations and fairness. There are currently no requirements for council training. So we agree that adding this component will ensure rules are communicated and expectations are discussed and known to all members as soon as they get on council. Bonfield did receive the training as part of the new term of council, but some municipalities don't offer this training. So having it as mandatory is welcomed. There's a provision for a member to be removed from council, and the council vote must be unanimous. And we suggest that this would be a 2/3 majority vote, much like other privileged motions. So if you were trying to remove somebody for a very serious contravention, then it would have to be everybody. And sometimes that has proven to be very difficult from a council table. Obviously not here, but in other municipalities, I'm sure we've all heard the stories of things that are coming. So we do suggest that a 2/3 majority vote would be preferred. And then there's a provision that if the Ontario Integrity Commissioner or the Municipal Council does not agree with the Municipal Integrity Commissioner, sorry, that gets confusing, that removal is warranted, then the decision is final and no other penalty can be imposed. So that's what's being proposed. So we're suggesting that a violation that the Municipal Integrity Commissioner is saying requires the councillor to be removed. If the Ontario Commissioner doesn't agree, then the Municipal Integrity Commissioner cannot go back to a reprimand or a 90-day suspension. So we feel like that should be a alternative should be provided. And then the maximum penalty without removal is 90-day suspension of remuneration. So as investigations increase or repeat, there should be a scaling penalty to apply. So investigations may end with a positive verdict or a gentle slap on the wrist to say, you know better, and some are just minor violations. However, if the behavior does not cease and it's not strong enough for removal, the member may still have the rest of the term to negatively affect the business of the municipality. So a scale upon repeated offenses such as 90 days, then 120, then 150 would be more of a deterrent. So our recommendation would be to send these comments to the province for any consideration, or we can add any if you have some.
Okay, any question?
So I have not seen the proposed legislative amendments, so I haven't read them in detail, but obviously removing a member of council is, we're walking, it's a democracy. So we're walking very closely to not honoring those that have voted for that municipal councillor. So I would need to see the proposed legislative amendments and how scripted it is about what those violations are. It can't just be a difference of opinion. It can't be, so.
It's not that scripted.
Yeah.
It just sets out the 4 criteria. So the case is, I think everyone knows about the case in Ottawa where there was a councillor who was convicted of sexual harassment, but they were not allowed to remove him from council, even though it was detrimental to everyone in the municipality, but it doesn't spell that out. So it leaves it open.
So that is an example of one that I would be totally fine with.
Yes.
But,
And I
um,
think that's why there's 3 different layers, right? So you still have to do your municipal integrity commissioner. You have to do your, then it goes to the Ontario integrity commissioner. And then if he agrees, it still comes back to council for that vote.
and council cannot vote until both the local and the Ontario Integrity Commissioner have both conferred. Okay. It's a fine line in the democracy where,
I think that's why they're being very careful with this. So.
yeah, I mean, your recommendations are to loosen it a bit more, which, you know, I understand the 2/3 majority because but if you look at accounts and you get into a larger municipality with 15, 20 members, yes, that makes sense because trying to but you look at somebody like us. So if it was involving one of us, we would, I don't know if we'd have a conflict or could vote on our own. So, you know, if it's to vote myself out and I vote no, well, then obviously here I am. But if I'm removed from the vote, 2/3 becomes like not that hard to get. Like it's, so that's where the 2/3 is tough when it's the smaller the number on a council.
Mhm.
So that's my only points of consideration. At this point, I reserve the ability to have more.
You want us to defer it?
It's time sensitive.
I don't think
Yeah.
we'll get any more information
Yeah.
than what we.
No,
already
I don't
have.
think we'll get any more. I don't think we need to defer it. It's just a word of obviously caution and, you know, if the province sees fit that it's gonna be 2/3 majority within the legislative changes, chances are
Yeah.
the Bonfield motion isn't gonna make it. A ton of influence, yeah. But yeah,
Hey,
so
we always count.
we always count, yeah.
So,
Open to change if you like, absolutely, this is it's from a council perspective, so.
I'll read the motion. Moved by Councillor McGinnis, second by Councillor Featherstone. The council for the Township of Bonfield accept the report from the CAO and further that a letter be sent to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and MPP Fidelli prior to February 10th, 2025, outlining the comments on the proposed changes to the legislation. All in favor? Okay. Carried. Next, we have report from the CAO on the proposed zoning amendment bylaw.
So in this one, there are 2 different sections of the zoning bylaw to talk about. So the first one I'll talk about is the housekeeping, and that is really the amendment bylaw to the comprehensive zoning bylaw that we had the planning advisory committee review. Okay. Council received that one on January 14th. From the PAC committee, the planning administrator provided a report at that meeting outlining the background and the purpose of the amendments, along with the timeline of the project to date and the work performed by the committee. And then council agreed to review it. So we've heard 2 comments. One from the first one was the minimum lot size of hunt camps. So the current proposal is a minimum of 1 hectare or 2.5 acres, as the township has crown land available for the hunting purposes. The concern is the proposed bylaw would permit a party to hunt on the same size of a lot as the requirement to build a house. And that would not be sufficient to ensure satisfactory considerations in respect to adjoining properties. So therefore, it was suggested that 10 hectares or 25 acres should be the minimum size of a lot permitting a hunt camp. Upon review of the municipal mapping, which the figure is included in your package, there are very few properties with less than 50 acres surrounding crown land. And one of the trends being addressed through the amendment bylaw is to encourage housing lots to be used for housing. So in allowing the minimum lot size to be used for hunting, this could detract from the land available for single family dwellings and or additional dwelling units. We did reach out to area municipalities for what their minimum requirements are as well. So East Ferris and Kelvin, they do not have exemptions for hunt camps, and they must adhere to the Ontario Building Code. Nipissing requires 20 hectares or 49 acres, I think that's what it converts out to, and a minimum setback from the road of 100 meters, and the maximum area for hunt camp is 70 square meters. Calendar permits hunt camps in the rural zone with 2 hectares or 5 acres. And then Matawan permits hunt camps in the rural area, but they must be set back 500 meters from any residence. So that's half a kilometer, which you would need more than 50 acres. And then Chisholm also requires the 50 acres for a hunt camp. So our recommendation is that the minimum lot size for a hunt camp should be 10 hectares or 25 acres. So that's one part. The second part of that amending bylaw is staff continued discussions with the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority regarding additional dwelling units in the residential limited services zone. So the North Bay has directed that the ADUs not be permitted on properties adjacent to lakes deemed at capacity. For example, Talon Lake is considered being a vulnerable lake at capacity. So the township's current zoning bylaws allow for secondary dwellings in the RLS zone. And the committee discussed this at length and very passionately. And in the end decided to remove secondary dwellings completely. But staff, discussions continued between staff and the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, even after we brought this to council. But the staff member that we were working with has left his position, and there's no timeline to replace the person. So we kind of stalled on this policy. So therefore, we're proposing to not amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw at this time in regard to permitting the secondary dwellings in the RLS, but rather include this in the policy for the full comprehensive review once the official plan has been approved. And then in the meantime, applicants seeking to introduce new or expanded secondary dwellings in the RLS zone will continue to require appropriate permits issued by the North Bay Mattawa Conservation because of the authority on that matter anyway. And then despite this concession, it is consensus when we reached out to our neighbors that planning that ADUs are not permitted along waterfront properties in Northern Ontario. And staff continue to support the proposed zoning amendment for no detached ADUs in the RLS. So essentially when we were sitting at the committee, we were, okay, let's take the second, we have a directive from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority. Let's take secondary dwelling out of the RLS because they said that in an email. So we agreed, let's take it out. But now that that person is left and it's stalled, we can't. So the option is we leave it in the bylaw as it's been in the bylaw since 2013 without incident, without impact. So we leave it in for the next 2 years and then we continue to work on how to fix this. So, and what that really means for the capacity. So our recommendation is that the proposed zoning amendment be changed to leave the use of secondary dwellings in the RLS zone. And again, it's just a secondary dwelling that one wall must be attached to the primary residence. So there would be no detached. Or, do you want to talk about those 2 recommendations before we get into the other one? So I'll pause.
Some questions.
Oh, sorry, Doug.
Okay, so Mattawa still dictates if you can have a secondary dwelling, is that what?
North Bay Mattawa
North Bay
Conservation.
Mattawa, yeah, is gonna say yes, because you're gonna have to expand your septic system if you're
Right.
adding on.
Right.
And they're saying at lakes with that capacity are not gonna get the
So
permit.
North Bay Mattawa Conservation has 2 arms, right? So they have their septic program and they also have the responsibility for the watchdog on our natural heritage features like our lakes. So under the Planning Act and a whole bunch of other acts like the Water Source Water Protection Act and the Clean Water Act, there's a bunch of acts that the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority has to follow. And they are, through those acts in the province, they are mandated to do these things. So they have deemed, and it's been in our policies for years, that Talon Lake is at capacity. So it cannot have, like, all the lots that are currently there can still be built on because it's factored in. I don't want to quote them, but it's typically a 3-bedroom home with a septic that they factor in on
Right.
a vacant lot. But they did not factor in that, you know, the existing lots could have 3 dwellings on them. So they're saying that it's at capacity. The
So-
lake is at capacity. That property wasn't considered to grow anymore. So they gave the directive that it's not to have additional dwelling units there. And it's in our current official plan in their zoning.
Okay. Thank you. Two things. I'm fine with this going forward for public consultation as recommended by with your changes. I mean, I'll just put it out there. I think that the 25 acres, I think that there's probably a compromise. I think 25 acres is too much, but we'll save that for further conversations when council deliberates where that should maybe land and after we hear public consultation. Because at the end of the day, the hunt camp itself isn't like somebody put a tree stand up where they're actually shooting a gun, not just where they're sleeping at night, right? So, you know, I think that there's a happy medium in there somewhere, but we'll save that conversation. And I'll just say for the ADUs, it would have saved us probably 5 hours worth of meetings if we could have, oh my goodness, yeah. That was a long, arduous process to come back out to, yeah, we're not gonna make any changes at this point, so thank you, Conservation Authority.
Wait, they did not remove the directive, like, to be clear, they did not remove the directive, but because we no longer have anyone who's going to help us with this over the next 2 years, we don't know when that person's gonna come in, that it's really the staff recommendation that let's just leave it the way it is, because we can't get there.
So that's what's of concern to me, is that we pay $40,000 a year for the Mattawa Conservation Authority, that's our levy. And there's no one that can come and speak to this or
Not at
help us
this
with
time.
this. Yeah.
Not at this time. We've talked to the CAO, and like the second level, but we've not had any concrete conversations in order for us to feel we can amend that.
The good news is, and to Councilor McGinnis's point, every application is gonna be looked at on its own merits. So, you know, it's still quite just because we're not saying no, doesn't mean it's a yes, right? I mean, there is quite the hurdles that individual property owners will have to go through in order to qualify, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then on the other zoning bylaws, that one is there's 2 bylaws on that one to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw and bylaw 2018-06. And these are to permit trailers on the rural lots. So this is not the trailer bylaw itself, but when it went to the lawyer the last time, they said, you do need to amend the zoning bylaw in this section and you need to amend the RV bylaw. So the changes you've seen the 2 bylaws that are there. Basically, we're just removing wordings where it says that, no, you can't have a trailer in the rural zone to, yes, you can have a trailer in the rural zone. So we're changing those provisions, but it's required for when we do get the trailer bylaw. And the lawyer has committed to having that to us by Friday. So we will have the final copy by Friday.
So this is just to make it align.
Yeah, yes.
I think this screams loud and clear that as a council, we're looking at actually opening up the opportunity to have trailers within parts of the municipality. We're not being restrictive. Somehow the public perception is that we're being restrictive when we actually have to pass a bylaw to allow trailers in certain areas of the municipality. So again, you know, this is being a proactive council in trying to open up and being more accommodating to citizens and in how they can use their property, but.
Okay, now am I going to go through the 4 motions after your report? Okay, moved by Councillor McGinnis, second by Councillor Clark. The council accepts the report on draft zoning bylaw amendments and further that the minimum size required for a hunt camp be amended to 10 hectares / 25 acres And further, that the permitted use of secondary dwellings in the residential limited services zone remain in the comprehensive zoning bylaw. And further, that with these amendments to the zoning bylaw be presented at a public meeting to receive input from the community. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Featherstone, second by Councillor Clark, that council hereby receives and approves first and second reading of the draft 2025-09 zoning amendment bylaw, amending bylaw 2012-49 to permit certain provisions for travel trailers, recreation vehicles, and at a public meeting be held. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor McGinnis, second by Councillor Clark, that council hereby receives and approves first and second reading of the draft 2025-10 zoning amendment bylaw, amending bylaw 2018-06 to permit certain provisions for travel trailers and recreation vehicles, and at a public meeting be held. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor McGinnis, that council hereby receives and approves first and second reading of the 2025-11 zoning amendment bylaw, amending bylaw 2012-49 for additional dwelling units on camps and accessory structures, and at a public meeting be held. All in favor? Carry. Okay, next we have report from CAO, the question period.
Your worship, can I be excused just long enough to get a glass of water?
Sure.
Thank you. Does anybody want anything? Well, good thing.
Will hold.
Thank you. Oh, you didn't hold it. I'm sorry.
Okay, you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, I'll jump into the report if that's okay. So in July 2024, council adopted the question period policy. The objective of the policy is to provide residents with the opportunity to appear before council outside of a delegation request and to promote good communications and community feedback. The Ontario Ombudsman has guidelines for open meetings for council, and Bonneville policy is written around these guidelines. So generally, the policy states that questions must be received in writing by 12 noon the Monday prior to the meeting. Questions must be seeking information and not making a statement. Questions must be within council's jurisdiction. Each question has a maximum of 2 minutes for the question to be asked and council to answer or ask any clarifying questions. And so there's 10-minute sessions, so up to 5 questions could be asked at a council meeting, and all questions become part of the record of the meeting and information is considered public. At the January 14th meeting, the mayor asked for a report on question period. So the analysis of that is, to date, there have been no questions put to council using this tool. The municipal office has not received feedback since the inception of the policy. To my knowledge, council members have not reported hearing concerns on this topic either. There's no positive or negative feedbacks. And I would suggest, since generally we do hear feedback if that's when improvements are required or desired, and to date we haven't, maybe the residents have accepted this policy. So therefore, no one, even though no one has taken advantage of the tool to date, I would suggest that it remains on the agenda. But in saying this, I do recommend that the advanced submission of the question continue to be required. And then this requirement will support the intent of the policy and promote good community relations. So I did put some options that we could continue to leave the question period on the agenda, or you could remove it.
Any question? Ben.
In my mind, this is no different than a delegation, so why not just leave it delegation? Like, it's doing the same thing. as a delegation. So why not just leave it as make a delegation? There's no, like, it doesn't, to me, it serves no purpose.
So I like it, because I think that it gives the residents just another avenue to come. And it's a little different than a delegation, because the delegation might be, is something that maybe is on the agenda. But if someone just has a question that they would like to come, and again, we want to promote respectful conversation and dialogue with constituents. So I think this is a good vehicle. I would go so far as to say that they could submit their questions like at the end of day on Monday.
No.
Okay.
I'm sure, Jason, you have something to say.
You're right. Thank you, your worship. I do indeed. I'm fine with this, and to me, the difference between a delegation and the question period is this gives an opportunity for council to answer a question, as opposed to council to a delegation can technically ask questions for clarification, as opposed to answering things on the spot to a delegation. So this allows for a bit more of a free form in an opportunity to respond to the question. So,
Steve?
Yeah, I like it. I backed it the first time. I still like it. Hasn't hurt us.
hasn't hurt us.
I think when we put this in place, and we must have had 25 or 30 people all wanted to speak. So we said, okay, we're going to do something and you're going to be able to speak. But they can't speak. They can't make a statement, but they can ask a question, right? And so my thoughts on it, if I had to sit in council and wait for 2.5 hours to have a 2-minute question, I wouldn't bother. It wouldn't seem that I would want to do that. But we can't do the same thing that we've been doing for the past 6 months or whatever, and expect something different. So I think that if we're going to allow the people to speak, not speak, to ask a question, I think it should be in where delegations are. In the beginning of the council meeting, they can come in, they can ask their question, and if they don't, they're welcome to stay. But if they don't want to stay, then they don't have to stay until the last part of the meeting. I just think that's a long time to sit into the meeting to ask a 2-minute question. And I understand I've read where other people have the same, basically the same bylaws we have, that, and I understand why that's in place to protect the staff, to protect the council if from any harassment or anything like that. I understand all of that, and that you should come in and be respectful and ask your question. But I don't know why they have to wait until the end of the council meeting to ask the question. I would like to see a change to the beginning of our council meeting, and that's my opinion. I don't know.
I'm indifferent, honestly. I mean, I don't mind having a question period. I can't think of a reason why, if we're gonna have a question period, it would matter if it's at the front of the meeting.
I think one of the parts, if I may, sorry.
Yeah.
One of the discussion points where would the question be allowed on anything, or would it just be on an agenda topic? And in the end, when we made the decision, it was on anything that they could ask. So still have to do it ahead of, like, submit the question ahead so we can prepare some sort of response. But if it was only on the agenda, then it would have to be on the end of the agenda. I think that's the reason why it went to the end.
But if we're gonna discuss something, do you need a mover and a seconder?
Okay, so they can ask a
Like-
question and then you're just answering that question.
And we have it ahead of time so we can, prepare if we have to do research or what have you, or maybe we can't answer.
Yeah,
all
there
questions.
will be questions you can't answer.
Yes, yes. But I also think that having it at the end, I mean, to sit through our council meetings. We sit through our council meetings. And I would want to encourage people to come and listen to us, hold us accountable. Don't come ask your questions and then leave. So be part of our democracy, you know?
Maybe the reason they have a question is because they don't pay attention to the rest of our council meetings.
Yeah, and I think.
No,
that
but they can watch
Yeah,
our full meeting and they can eat dinner, they can do whatever they want and they can see us there.
So interestingly, to the point, I think if it's ahead of time, I actually don't think the question should be able to be on a subject that's being brought up on that agenda.
It couldn't be.
You
Right.
can't,
Yeah,
it couldn't be.
Right, so that's the
Exactly.
difference. So, yeah, like, you can go ahead, if we move it to the beginning and we're gonna be talking about, I'll use the railway as an example. If we're speaking to it in that meeting, the question can't be about something that's being discussed later on the agenda.
Correct. Correct.
I like it at the end.
Well, I wonder if they would find that very restrictive, because I think if it's at the beginning and they can't ask about the council. Yeah.
So we're assuming they've picked up the agenda and they want to ask this question, so they're gonna sit for 2 hours.
No, yeah, I don't mind having it at the beginning. I just, as long as people don't find it too restrictive when we say, sorry, your question can't be on that topic due to it's on the agenda for further conversation or deliberation by council. As long as people don't find that restrictive, I'm fine.
The question can still be asked, even if it's on the agenda. They just won't get an instant answer because we're gonna.
We have to discuss it later.
But then
Discuss it
they're gonna
on the
want,
agenda.
what if you want to ask a question to them?
And what if that agenda item is at the very end? We have to sit through the whole meeting.
I just,
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I guess we wouldn't be able to speak to it until
No,
it's,
then they would just be making a statement. So they would come in, ask a question. They would make their statement in the form of a question, but you can't answer.
But at
Right.
You
least that,
can't speak to the issue.
but at least that puts it, sorry, Garen.
No, go ahead.
In our mind that this individual has this specific question about something that's on the agenda so that we can talk to it about it when it comes up. If we waited until the end, we don't know that this person has this question and wants this particular thing covered in that agenda topic. It at least gives us the option of discussing it during that time.
or,
They have to give a question on Monday, right?
Yes.
so to that point, why can't the deputy clerk or the CAO put it on the agenda either at the beginning or the end, according to the question? Like,
yeah,
Do both.
would you like it at the beginning?
want
or the end?
two.
Yeah.
no,
You want one, two questions? Yes, Dan, Dan is coming on halfway.
One question, if it's already on the agenda. it can be-
I don't think Andre'd like to.
Yeah,
agenda
I like
that.
it. We'll see you at 4 o'clock every Tuesdays, because we have question periods, 2 of them now every Tuesday.
Yeah, Dan went from nothing.
Oh, no, I'm
Two.
still
Yeah, yeah.
happy, so.
Okay, here we are back to it again. So. I'm going to read this and it will leave it as it is. Okay?
Will it leave it as is, or could,
No, this would leave it as it is,
does
right?
it say at the end of the agenda?
It doesn't say. It
Yes,
says
it's
it's gonna become a permanent council agenda item.
We have to,
Where
amend.
it sits on there, I think is actually,
You have to tell me where it is, because I have to amend the procedure bylaw.
Yeah, bylaw.
Because the agenda is very prescribed. The order of the agenda is very prescribed. So you would have to tell me if it's at the beginning or at the end. So if it's at the beginning, they can ask a question. And you would have to be very strict in following the procedure bylaw. So say if they asked a question at the beginning and then you talked about it, but you misunderstood their question, they're not allowed to speak during the meeting. So then if you have it at the beginning, they ask the question they don't understand, it goes to your restrictive, right? So will it show, what does that look like for the community? Whereas at the end. you're
And
still
then if
answering.
they had a question that wasn't on the agenda,
Yeah.
then are we allowed to engage at the beginning or no?
sure.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. So we're debating this and how many questions have been asked so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put this in my mouth.
I'm going to read it. Moved by Counselor McGinnis, second by Counselor Featherstone, that the Council for the Township of Fonthill hereby confirms question period will become a permanent council agenda item, and further that the procedural bylaw be amended to reflect this addition. All in favor?
I'm fine with it being in favor, because again, we didn't say where, so that's still up for conversation.
Could I put here to be determined?
Sure. Location on agenda to be determined.
Determine it right now.
Because we can't amend the procedural bylaw until we know, right?
Okay, how
So-
about this? Let's try to, the end didn't work. Let's try it, because we didn't get any questions. Let's try it at the beginning for a while, and if that, let's see if that
Let's
helps.
go another 6 months.
Well, why not? Let's try 6 months at the beginning.
Okay, so then would it not go in the procedural bylaw?
If it's a
If
pilot.
we said we're going to try it for 6 months and.
Yeah, let's try it at the beginning.
Yeah.
If we get no questions, then we'll try it in the middle.
Or the option.
Or the, yeah, okay, option down.
Or just stick with the delegation.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going through great lengths to be really open and transparent here for nobody who wants to come in and ask questions.
So,
If you want to, you can just say, and we'll pilot it at the beginning of the agenda for the next 6 months. And then I do not need to change the procedure.
and
yeah,
don't say that the bylaw, that'll become a
Right.
permanent bylaw.
I like that.
Okay,
Then we'll find out that, like, if it's strategically a bad idea because it causes more problems at the beginning than not, then we're not stuck to it, right? Maybe it won't, but we might not be thinking of something this evening.
But then I think we really have to stick to the procedural bylaw because you cannot answer. So you can't be tempted to answer or.
Why the honey?
And they can't speak when you. do
That's
speak to
right.
it. So
No,
that's-
It's
absolutely.
not a conversation.
Mhm.
wait till I read this. Okay,
Somebody
that
go
the
in.
Council for the Township of Bonfield hereby confirms question period will become a permanent council item for a term of 6 months and to be placed at the beginning of the agenda. Correct,
First question will become a council agenda item, a permanent council agenda item.
yeah,
Remove permanent.
Yeah, remove
Yeah,
permanent.
remove permanent.
for,
Just
It's-
scratch out permanent.
take permanent out?
I think so,
Mhm.
because we're still piloting
We're
it.
piloting.
Oh. Okay, for a term of 6 months,
Mhm.
trial?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I ask the question, all in favor? I guess it's a no, it does.
Yeah, it's a no. I'm surprised you didn't call for a recorded vote just so you could say no.
It was really a no. Okay. Next, we have a motion for the planning consultant. Where did it go? Oh, here. We have the report for the planning consultant.
Okay, so the township issued a request for proposal for planning consulting services in 2024 to provide planning and training to staff. Tulloch from North Bay was the successful consultant. So since Tulloch is our planner of record as a result of the RFP, they cannot act for any property owner within the township. This means that some applications are being delayed while residents obtain alternative qualified planners to submit applications and reports that the planning department require to process a development application. So since the township now has its own internal knowledge, we've grown its internal knowledge and expertise since 2024, then the dedicated planner of record is no longer required. But this does not prevent the planning administrator from discussing general local planning matters with Tulloch, but rather also allows the township to utilize other planning consultant on an as-needed basis. So if a resident wanted to hire Tulloch, we could ask a different company planning consultant to assist on it, and it opens up so that the residents have more options. So our recommendation is to release Tulloch as the official planner of record for the township.
Any question?
Is there anything in the contract that,
No, Tulloch is happy to be released.
I was gonna say, is Telly fine with this?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
great,
It's better for everyone.
So we would still use them as long as the municipality determined that there would be no conflict of interest.
Correct.
And how many consultants do we have that we use with the municipality?
Currently, we use Tulloch, and because we've had a couple applications, we've also been using JL Richards, who's doing our official plan. So we reached out to JL Richards for our housekeeping amendment bylaw to get advice on that. So those are typically the two that we use.
Just the two of them?
Yeah.
We don't have a third one with respect to the court issues? We don't use the consultant down in the Muskoka district or Aurora, wherever? We don't use one there?
Our lawyer has used them when they need planning reports for different items that we have going to court.
Okay,
Then
so they're out of town anyway, so, but we use JL Richards and Tulloch, right?
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor McGinnis, second by Councillor Featherstone. Whereas an RFP for planning consultant services in 2024, and whereas council awarded the contract agreement to Tulloch Engineering, and whereas municipal resources have changed since this proposal commenced, and whereas awarded firm may declare conflicts in certain circumstances where a private sector project would introduce a real or perceived conflict with the township, and whereas municipal staff have the ability to accept or not accept such conflict and would accept such conflict in the event staff determine it generally benefits the township in doing so. Now therefore, council resolves the staff may seek third-party planning consulting services on an as-needed basis when such accepted conflict is present. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Next, we have the report on the draft complaint policy.
Okay, so the township of Bonneville does not currently have an updated bylaw enforcement policy or official complaint process. So this policy being presented to council is to set out the process and expectations for consistent resolution to complaints. It's important to recognize that this is for official complaint processes. This will not eliminate staff responding to concerns or service requests that come in and need to be addressed immediately. However, the policy does provide a resident assurance for action and follow-up when they do submit a signed form. It's staff's objective to collaborate with residents to reach compliance through education and not strict enforcement. However, should higher enforcement methods become necessary, the signed complaint form is critical. The majority of complaints staff receive are quickly resolved through conversations, and the personal information on the signed form remains confidential unless they are required to be summoned for court purposes, and this is a very rare occurrence. The policy sets out the timelines for staff to respond within, lays out the expectations for all parties, and addresses vexatious complaints. Most complaints are considered appealed when we go through a court proceeding, but should residents disagree with the bylaw officers through the voluntary compliance, then they can certainly always speak to the CAO to resolve any complaints. And in 2025, and though I keep saying it, I do want to bring the administrative penalty program to Bonneville for your consideration. And in that, there's a very formal process, and you're not required to go to the POA. It's still an option, but you don't have to go there. And in there, there's two levels of appeals whenever there's something issued. So there's appeals built into that system as well. But most of our bylaws are when there's an infraction or there's an investigation, they're managed through just education and conversation. So.
Any questions? Moved by Councillor Corbett, second by Councillor Featherstone, that the council for the township of Bonfield hereby adopts the bylaw enforcement complaint and service request management policy as presented to be implemented immediately. All in favor? Carried. But just a comment, and those forms are not mandatory. If they do have a complaint, they can call into the office, and a verbal complaint is still acceptable through the office, right?
It depends on what type of enforcement that they are looking for. So typically we're reactionary as opposed to, so if they call in, you know, if it's like there's a pothole or the snowbank here needs to be pushed back, or if there's any, like my neighbor's doing this noise, we will still go out to do an investigation. But if it gets into anything heavier, then it has to be a signed form.
So these forms are going to be on our website, so if they were going to file a formal complaint, they could fill that in, sign it, and email it in to us, right?
Yes, I'm hopeful that someone will continue or finish teaching me how to use forms.
As a suggestion, it might be helpful if on our website, like if we stepped it out and said there's an inquiry, there's a concern, and then there's a complaint, right? So you have an inquiry might just be a general knowledge question, a concern might be a pothole, and then a complaint is like is that formal? But if you maybe actually stepped out and said, you know, and give almost examples of what, and you know, what you might fall into each of these categories, and the implications. If it's a formal complaint, put it there, like this is the steps that will be taken. It's very formal. It's very, right? So
I also think that you should add compliments to that as well. If someone has something good to say, they can fill out the form and submit it, and it would go to our KPIs, right? So.
Crash a server.
I think Alex.
I just know currently on our website, we've got our service requests section that we do have a lot of like complaints or concerns that come through. But I think discussing with Nikki that I know we're trying to revamp our website, so maybe that's something else we could add, a new platform or forum page to separate the complaints and that sort of thing, right? So
for sure.
Good. Next we had the fire district, the report that's celebrating the arts event. Is there anything you want to talk about on it?
Next Friday? I don't even know what day we are. Next Friday, I believe. Yeah. At the community center. So been promoting it on social media, and it's kind of like a dance type evening, celebrating arts and different cultures from the tour. So something new to Bonfield. We haven't had this before. Flyer. As Jason just pulled it. So this has been on social media.
I'm sure everybody's seen it. Looks like it's pretty interesting.
This is was brought forward through the rec committee, but Natalie Burton, that was originally on the rec committee, applied for a grant, was successful with the grant, and has since stepped down from the rec committee. But big hats off to Natalie for bringing this forward.
It's great.
Sorry.
So in the celebrating the arts, there was two components. One was the rendezvous that is on the 7th, and the second one was art installations in the park out here. So that piece, we put a call out to artists for them, and they have until March 10th to reply. And then after that, we're hopeful that the rec committee will have a special meeting so that they can shortlist the art installations that they would like to see. How many, I mean, we hope we get lots of submissions. And if they can have a meeting prior to the council meeting in March, so that we can have council make that final decision on who the art installations will be awarded to. So there is dollars and cents in money that's also attached to that, but it's through the grant too.
Great.
So it just sets out some timelines too.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Corbett, that the council for the township of Bonfield accepts the report from the administrative assistant and hereby approves the timeline. That's to do with that. Celebrate there. All in favor? Next, we have adoption of committee minutes and motions. Nothing from the corporate services committee. Next, we have the emergency services committee. Okay. Nothing for the police services board. I skipped one. Nothing for the police services boards, but we have a meeting tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Then we're going to go back to this recreation committee thing with the fireworks. I'm going to say something and then I'm going to say nothing more. I promise.
I didn't see this on the agenda.
I spoke out about it because I really felt that I don't want it just to be my opinion that I think that there should be fireworks for Canada Day. I would hope that it would be what the people wanted. So there was a suggestion that possibly we ask that at the town hall meeting. I'm going to leave it to whatever decision is. I'll be aware of the fireworks is in Canada Day. If it's in North Bay and it's not here, I'll go there. But I don't want to go over it, and I don't want to get upset about it because it doesn't make a difference to me at this point. It's what do the people want? And if they're fine with it being on Labor Day, that's fine as well. Okay, so nothing. Next we go items for discussion, and it's the letter from Municipal Housing Infrastructure Programs regarding Development Road. And that wasn't good news, was it?
No. So it does say that we did not receive the funding for the development road as we hoped. So now we go to plan B, where we talked about doing 2 kilometers or 4 kilometers every year. So that's certainly something that Public Works Manager and I are sitting down and trying to get quotes to figure out what those costs are going to be so that we can present them to council. Along with our other road projects.
We have to accept that letter too, eh? Moved by Councillor Featherstone, seconded by Councillor Corbett. The council hereby accepts the correspondent from the Municipal Housing Infrastructure Program in regard to the rehabilitation of Development Road project for information purposes. So all in favor? Carried.
Just out of curiosity, what if we rejected that?
Yeah.
Nope. We don't agree.
Well, it's disappointing when you fill out applications and have the highest hopes when you fill it in that you're going to at last, maybe we're going to get some money for Development Road. But I'm sure that money will come around somewhere and we'll get it done.
With all these elections coming up, there should be money flowing somewhere.
Somewhere, sometime. Okay, next we have the report from the 2024. Did I skip anything? No. And that comes to Alex. Is there anything you want to tell us about that report?
It's just our annual water quality statement report from the landfill site. So
Yeah.
As always, we do this yearly, so it's nothing new. I'll probably come back with another recommendation later on. I'm still waiting for a capacity report for the landfill capacity. See how many years we have left, but I know it was recommended in the top of the casing elevations to determine the flow direction of the water. That was just another thing that they recommended within the report to add on for this year. So I think it's a good thing to know which way the leaching's going. nothing really came back too surprising, I don't believe. Like there's iron, manganese and sodium found within the water there. But obviously we don't drink the water that's there, so.
When I was the mayor before and we used to do the testing, we had 4 wells. Now there's 7, right?
Correct, yeah.
And in reading that and trying to understand there's so much in there, and especially with the metals and everything. And they say that there's more of a metal content in there than what there has been in past history. Is that a concern, or is there a reason for that?
So if you relate back to the extended report that had all the analysis data on it too, the samples were taken at different times. So you'll see like in the spring during the runoff season and that sort of time, the samples were actually higher than in the summer where there's not so much water flowing. And that's like, yeah, I was just touched on for the future monitoring. That's why I'd like to check to see like which direction.
They want to
Stuff's
monitor
flowing.
more often, right?
Yeah, more in depth just to figure out which way like the water's flowing, right? So if it's going to affect anybody in the area, which to date it hasn't. But I think that's good for the municipality to follow up on. So
Yes, because you don't want it to be going back into the creeks, right?
correct, yeah.
Why don't we get Pinchin to do a zoom in and like give us the results from the survey and a quick rundown on the water. I mean,
Yeah, no,
they're more
that's-
than willing to
I've
do
been-
it.
Yeah, I've been discussing with them.
I mean, they can break it down to council and
It'd be a lot easier than
sure, because I mean,
looking at all the numbers and parts.
they
per-
mean, you know, what does that mean to any of us really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, Pinchin usually, they'll zoom in and they'll give, if they do a survey, then they'll explain how many years, how much capacity we used last year. And then, you know. on
Cause
the-
I'm still waiting on my capacity report from last year, so I know there's a FYP that had to go in for some stuff that I couldn't provide them, so.
Right,
And they do the capacity?
Yes,
They check that, yeah?
Yeah.
They're really thorough with their reports, like there's so much stuff in there that it would be beyond most of us, and I suppose you, because you work with Nipissing, you'd be more understanding, but there's a lot there.
right. And that's why it's good if they zoom in, they'll give you an executive summary on everything and.
Oh, zoom. Oh, I see what you're saying. I think I meant like zoom in on like an aerial.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
When we get the volume report.
Yeah.
We'll have them present.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
that'll
we-
give us an idea of what our ROI is on our compactor too, right?
well, yeah, so essentially, I think they might have performed their initial before the purchase of the
Oh, okay.
compactor. But at least we'll have data from
Yeah.
Yeah,
last
yeah,
year and
yeah.
this year, and we can do comparables.
Yeah,
so.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I mean, the landfill is 1,000 times better with that compactor already. Like it's, you know, it's pushed, it's packed, it's. you know,
Yeah, and
cars aren't backing up
Seems
a
to be working
mile.
well. I haven't had any recent complaints about
Yeah,
the
no, it-
runway size and that. sort of
Jason
thing.
doesn't have to drive in forward.
Okay, I've never had to drive.
Okay, we can accept this, moved by Councillor Corbett, seconded by Councillor Featherstone, that council hereby accepts the 2024 landfill site inspection as received for information purposes. All in favor? Carried. Now, the next one. You have to tell me what the weed inspector does.
Donna? I knew this was coming.
I wanted to volunteer to be the weed inspector.
I'm serious. Do you go on people's property and check for weeds?
It's more so, there's that side of it too, but, it's more like roadside growth, right? So, invasive or like poisonous.
It's more the invasive species,
Yes.
like hogweed and stuff like that.
I can't. Philomite, spilla, yeah, that's it.
Like money.
Yeah.
Okay.
The province dictates that we must have one.
We have to have a
We
weed
must have one.
And
so.
grow up. So
Alternate sources of revenue.
Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor McGinnis. The council for the township of Bonfield hereby adopts bylaw 2025-07, being a bylaw to appoint a weed control inspector for the township of Bonfield as presented, and is considered read 3 times and passed this 28th day of January 2025. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have resolutions to be considered for adoption. We got deleted. Town of Kearney letter. Moved by Councillor McGinnis, seconded by Councillor Corbett, that the council for the township of Bonfield supports the town of Kearney and urging the Ontario government to create tailored policies that recognize the specific conditions and requirements of rural areas, ensuring that any regulatory changes support sustainable and contextually appropriate growth. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have the township of Tarbet. Moved by Councillor McGinnis. No, moved by Councillor Corbett. Ordered by. That's my concern.
Down here now.
Where's my Tarbet down here? Yeah, moved by Councillor Corbett, second by Councillor McGinnis, that the council for the township of Bonfield supports the township of Tarbet, objecting to the increase to the 2025 levy imposed by MPAC, given that they would have been relieved of the responsibility of providing municipal enumeration services, including the creation of preliminary list of electors, and will have a significant reduction in service provision and staffing requirement, and that this service will be provided at no cost by Elections Ontario. So that's the objection to their increase impact. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have a phenom. Moved by Councillor Featherstone, second by Councillor Clark. The council for the township of Bonfield supports the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, requesting that the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services undertake a province-wide service review, including the funding model. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have this one. And I said I declare an interest because it's aggregate, and I'm just going to step in the bathroom.
Okay. Moved by Councillor McGinnis, second by Councillor Featherstone, that the council for the township of Bonfield supports the township of Puglish, objecting to the undue burden being placed on municipal taxpayers to subsidize the aggregate industry, and calls on the provincial government to reevaluate and correct the misguided subsidies being provided to the aggregate sector and ensure that future tax policies are fair, equitable, and consistent for all taxpayers. Questions or comments? All in favor? Sorry.
All over.
All over.
Okay, what do we have now?
Correspondence.
Oh, yes. Next, we have the correspondence. And I'm just going to read a motion to accept the correspondence. And then if there's anything that you wish to support, if you could call Andre next week, and then she'll make up the resolutions for us, okay? So moved by Councillor Corbett, second by Councillor Clark. The council receives the correspondence circulated with the agenda of January 28, 2025. All in favor? Carried. Okay. So next, we have moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Featherstone, that the meeting of council hereby proceeds to closed session in accordance with section 239 of the municipal act as amended at what time?
8:43.
8:43.
Sure you don't want to do another check to see if there's anybody for question periods? No, nobody here. All right.
Okay, I will end the recording.
Oh, I skipped past it.